If you've got a big brain and you cannot lie, these intelligence builds are for you. I've been itching to do more Elden Ring builds. So we're going to do 3 at once rather than the usual one in a single video. And then if you guys like these videos, maybe I'll do the other stats like strength and dex and faith and all that good stuff. Let's go. Let me know in the comments if you have any other epic intelligence builds. I love theory crafting in Elden Ring. There are so many cool weapons and skills and stats and ashes of wars and things to use. There's a ton of fun to have in this game. We will start out with the Frost Mage. Now, the Frost Mage builds play similarly to another build on this list, but essentially you will use the Dark Moon Greatsword, Ash of War, the Moonlight Greatsword, and this skill will imbue your Greatsword with frost and add a unique effect to your heavy attack, which will throw a frost wave in front of you. You can combine this with the Great Bait Phalanx to deal stagger damage to enemies, so you can often stagger them to follow up with critical hits. And this build also uses the Snow Witch Hat, which will increase your cold sorceries. And the build focuses on using these ice sorceries and this sword as kind of your main crux for this build. The main cold sorceries you'll use is Anjula's Moonblade, which is like a souped up version of the Carrion Greatsword, which will do a frost wave attack in front of you. Zamo Ice Storm is pretty cool. I like this. It's like an AoE attack that will deal frostbite damage and just frost damage to enemies in a circle around you. You can actually charge this up so the effect lasts longer and deals more damage. Glintstone Iceberg is like an ice version of the Great Glintstone Shards that you can use. This has a shorter range, but it does do the ice damage on top of it, so that's why it's beneficial for this build, because you get that extra cold damage bonus. And when you combine all these things with the Moonlight Greatsword, you are going to be triggering the frostbite effect on most enemies pretty regularly, unless they die faster, because as you do level up this build and because of all the bonuses you have, you will kill things mostly pretty quickly. But the main stat for this build is intelligence. You're going to want to at least have 60 intelligence and then move into mind, vigor, endurance, and you're going to need a little bit of strength and dex just to be able to wield the Dark Moon Greatsword, so be mindful to make sure you've got enough of that. But the main focus here is on intelligence. For your other weapons, I'm using the Carrion Regal Scepter here, but you can use a different scepter if you choose to. I just like the Carrion Regal Scepter. We don't need a shield in this build. You're really just using the Dark Moon Greatsword in one hand and then the Carrion Scepter in the other. The Snow Witch Hat, which you already mentioned, and then you can just wear the rest of the Snow Witch armor. However, it's probably better to put some better armor on, because you will spend some time in melee range or in that kind of mid-range just so you can actually land the Moonlight Greatsword's like heavy attack, like wave ability. So you will take some damage here, and the Snow Witch set has like 0 resistances, so you will die very quickly, which is something that I learned when just wearing the full set. For your talismans, you want to rock the Godfrey icon to enhance your charged spells and skills, because we do have some charged spells and skills in this build. The Magic Scorpion Charm will raise your magic damage, but it does lower your damage negation. Another reason why you should put some armor on. The Shard of Alexander greatly boosts the attack power of your skills, so well worth using this because of the Moonlight Greatsword. And Carrion Filigree Crest, so that when you do cast those skills or the Ash of War from your sword, you don't use all of your FP and you've still got plenty left over. For your spells, you don't just have to stick to this ice theme with this build. You can use any of the other spells because you've got such a high intelligence. Really, you could use any of the spells that you choose. I am using Rani's Dark Moon as well, because it does launch that cold effect to enemies, so you get a little bit of that extra damage. It also increases their susceptibility to taking damage from that magic effects as well. So there's a lot of benefits to this build and freedom of how you want to play it, whether you want to go a bit more into the magic line and just simply use the Dark Moon Sword occasionally, but I think you want to find that balance between the two, and I do like this combination. The next build is the Sorcerer. The Sorcerer focuses simply on range spell casting and avoiding melee range entirely. This build uses the Jellyfish Shield's Ash of War Contagious Fury, which boosts all damage by 20% for 30 seconds. You can combine this with the Terra Magica, which will further increase your range spell damage, and then use something like Comet Azure to just melt through enemies. But this build is all about finding the spells that work for you and just using them realistically. You will use the Ash of War on the shield to give yourself extra damage, and then just cast any of the main spells. Your primary spell is probably going to be the Great Glintstone Shard. It's a cheap cast, it is quick as well, and it does solid damage, so it's kind of your staple spell. I'm a big fan of Rock Sling. It will stagger enemies regularly, it keeps enemies away from you, you cast those 3 rocks at them. Loretta's Great Bow is a great ranged option as well, or Loretta's Mastery. Comet Azure to shoot that beam directly out in front of you. It'll shred through enemies if you stay in the beam, and you can then use the Terra Magica as well to boost that effect even more. And you can really only use that on slow moving or the larger targets, but it's well worth using just to melt through those bosses. Your primary stat for this build is again going to be intelligence, and then your secondary stats being mind, vigor, and endurance. You don't really need any dexterity for this build. You will need a little little bit of strength to hit that requirement in order to be able to use the jellyfish shield, which is 20. For your armor, I would wear the Queen's Crescent Crown to increase your intelligence by a little bit to increase your overall damage. Your armor, otherwise, really up to you. You could just rock any kind of robes or anything because you will be mostly in range, but you could just rock some armor anyway and just medium roll. That is entirely up to you. Weapon wise, I am again using the Carrion Regal Scepter. It is my favorite scepter. We're going to use it in all of these builds, to be honest, but you could switch out to Lucen's Glintstone Staff, which will enhance the powers of your sorceries but increase the additional FP cost, so they'll cost more. And because this build you can focus a bit more on mind and having such a high FP cost, you can really outweigh that effect, but that's entirely up to you as to which option you want to go, though I just prefer to use the Carrion Regal Scepter. And in terms of your talismans, we're sticking with Godfrey Icon again to enhance your charge spells and skills. Magic Scorpion Charm again to increase your magic damage. We're also going with the Radagon Icon this time to shorten the spell casting time, because you are entirely going to be casting all of the time. Any reduction in that casting time is beneficial to you, and the Stargazer Heirloom to increase your intelligence even more. Now, as mentioned, there is tons of flexibility in the spell usage here. Now, if you want to stick with this Sorcerer, the ranged option, then sticking with these spells that we've mentioned, the Great Glintstone Shard, Rocksling, the Redder's Mastery, Comet Azure, those kind of spells will absolutely see you with great success. But then you can just chuck some armor on like I have in this footage and to basically make it an Enchanted Knight build and run with like the Carrion Slicer and Carrion Piercer, and then you can kind of mix those two builds together. You can still do all that range stuff, you can do that close range stuff without virtually any changes to this build, really just picking up those extra skills. There's a lot of flexibility in the Sorcerer and just running like a pure Sorcerer intelligence build like we are here. My personal favorite intelligence build, and the build how I finished the game for the first time, fun fact, is the Moonveil Samurai. Now this build centers around the strength of the Moonveil Katana's Ash of War, the Transient Moonlight. This skill is exactly the same as the Unsheath Ash of War, except it has a magic wave effect that comes out of it from whether you do the light attack version, which is like a horizontal wave, or the heavy attack version, which is a vertical wave. The vertical wave has more stagger potential, and you'll probably use this most of the time. You can combine this with the Great Blade Phalanx in the same way that you can with the Frost Mage build to deal stagger damage to follow with critical hits, though this build, it is well worth doing and it is much more effective than in the Frost Mage build because of the tremendous damage that this attack does on its own, plus the stagger damage. They have nerfed it a smidge, but it's still like really, really good. The Carrion Regal Scepter is our scepter again, so we don't really need to talk about that again. And for your primary stats here, it's going to be intelligence and dexterity. Intelligence leaning first, so you can get that 60 requirement to use the Carrion Regal Scepter, and then dexterity. Because the Moonveil Katana stacks evenly with intelligence and dexterity, eventually you're going to get diminishing returns from putting points into intelligence, so you want to put some of those points into dexterity. And then mind, vigor, and endurance. You want to put those pretty much evenly with a slight priority into vigor, because you will be in melee range for most of this build, so that extra bit of health will be absolutely beneficial. We're not using a shield at all in this build, though you can. I did use a shield during my original playthrough for bits and pieces, but mostly you'll just be dual wielding the sword and a staff. Now your armor here, you can rock the Queen's Crescent Crown again to increase your intelligence. However, you can honestly just wear whatever you like for this build. Anything that allows you to medium roll. I'm wearing the White Reed set here just because I wanted to look like a samurai in this footage, but realistically you can wear anything you like. Talismans here, it's all based around that attack. So Carrion Filigree Crest to lower the FP cost of the skill itself. Magic Scorpion Charm to increase your magic damage. We're also using Shard of Alexander to greatly boost the attack power of the skill itself, and the Green Turtle Talisman to increase the stamina recovery speed. The only real spell you'll use in this build is the Great Blade Phalanx for that stagger potential that comes with it, but you can combine it with anything else, right? You can use the Glintstone Shard, Loretta's Great Bow, anything like that, just to kind of combine this build with other things because of the flexibility that it does have. But realistically, you want to just focus on the Moonveil Katana, as it is such a strong attack, the Ash of War on it, and you want to combine it with that stagger potential from the Great Blade Phalanx. Realistically, that's all you really need. Let me know in the comments your favorite intelligence builds. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.